This is Eric Mwadeth, Mwadeth.com, with part 3 in a series I began 3 days ago here. We can see for February 25th, 2021. Right now, markets are trading at the lows for the session, as you can see here. And here is BTC, Ethereum, and Litecoin. Now, the market being down is not that much of a surprise, as we've been discussing. Remember, yesterday the Dow closed at all-time highs, and there was suspicion, in a way, based on the 4-hourly chart, which I'm going to show next. This is the daily. But one thing I want to emphasize here is we always want to be sensitive to the market trapping us. So yesterday, let me explain. If we take a trend line, any trend line, if you notice that the market is doing uniform action below or above or something like this, or what the Dow has done, up and below, all these types of uniform activity are meant and designed to be a trap to confuse you. They are uniform, they are designed. Let me explain what I mean here. The Dow gives us a good example of this. If we draw a trend line here, you'll notice yesterday and today now, the Dow has gone above the line and back below it with uniform action. The uniform action, as I always say, is the key in my own research. This is my own thinking, years of research. This uniform action tends to suggest that it is a well-designed trap. Now, we also have to put things in perspective. Just because the market is pulling back doesn't mean that it is destroyed. But in time, should we come and break this RSI lows line? So for now, we can see, yes, a short-term sell signal, but a major sell signal has to be after and during a break. In other words, we need to see a break of this RSI lows line at some point to entertain even the makings of a major bear market. Right now, a pullback for sure. But again, I keep emphasizing this. It's what happens when we come to this line that will determine the trend. It's another way of saying it's what happens when the market comes back to test that upward sloping 50-day moving average that determines the trend. It's what happens when the market comes and tests this upward sloping 200-day moving average that determines the next major trend. As an example, if the market is still bullish, it could conceivably bounce above the 50 or bounce around the 200-day. If this market is truly going to entertain lower prices. Now, keep in mind the backdrop story is the market has had a major run. Major run if you take the off the lows of 2020, or if you take the lows of 2009. Either way, the market has had a big run and is due, overly due, for a substantial bear market. But we can only take things moments to moment. So for now, yes, a pullback. We can see this reversal signal here with the uniform activity. So clearly yesterday was a well-designed, and it did smell like a well-designed trap. It just felt like a trap right there. And this is the reason. Remember yesterday I was talking about the 4-hourly on the Dow, and I was talking about that RSI number. RSI level of 61.8. This being the strongest type of negative divergence. And I was hinting at what looked to me the possibility. Remember, it's only a possibility. It's not like I don't know for sure. And we can say, I was talking about this from an educational standpoint, that the market looked like it was going to be rejected as it made all-time highs. But there was a little bit of a problem because it looked like it was going to stall around the 61.8 threshold. And the S&P 500 had done something similar. So why not the Dow also? Also, by the way, if we take the RSI top side on the Dow, we can actually connect the tops. So if I draw it as such, we can see that it makes sense that the market is being stalled precisely on Q right there. Oh, and by the way, I need to take this opportunity and remind you about the RSI being rejected. At the RSI 69.1, this rejection is coming with uniform activity rejection. So uniform activity rejection right there. Not a good look in the short term. That's the Dow. In fact, we can see the same thing with the Dow Transports. As I mentioned yesterday, the Dow Transports were looking similar to that of the Dow. On the daily for the Dow Transports, RSI 69.1, uniform activity rejection. On the transports, on the 4 hourly, you got RSI being rejected twice here at the 69.1 threshold. Actually, scratch that. It's not the 69.1 threshold. It is, let me clear myself here. It's not the 69.1 threshold. My bad. I'm talking about the 61.8 threshold right here. This being the worst type of negative divergence, according to my own research, right there. Markets making new highs, but RSI being rejected around the 61.8 RSI level. That's the 4 hourly. Remember I mentioned yesterday, this is the S&P 500. It made all-time highs there, but the RSI was rejected at the 61.8. And we can see here, again, this came with negative divergence around the RSI 61.8 threshold. And we can see the market already starting to pull back. So the Dow seemingly was going to do the same thing is what I'm trying to say, but we needed evidence. We're getting the evidence today. In the video from yesterday, I was talking about the NASDAQ 2 hourly, where we could see potential for rejection on this RSI lows line. So you might need to watch part 1 and part 2, but this was being hinted by the market. Either we were going to get movement above the line, or we are going to get rejection, and we can see the market has decided to take the rejection part as of right now. So things are pointing down, by the way, which reminds me, on the daily for the NASDAQ, I was mentioning that in my opinion, humble opinion, the market looked to me like eventually this trend line that everybody was happy the market was holding, I think this trend line, in my humble opinion and estimation, could very easily break. We haven't seen the trend line break. Market is sitting exactly on the trend line, but a break would make sense. Otherwise, what the bulls want to see is the market holding around here and back above this RSI lows, no, price lows trend line. This needs to hold. Otherwise, it might spook some people and we can see a deeper move below current levels. So right now we are sitting exactly on this trend line. Support or break is going to be our next collective experience. Personally, I lean towards a break. And as I mentioned in the part 1 or part 2, part of the reason is because the market has been excessively irrational lately. Stocks just moving with unbelievable big moves. On the daily, take a look at the NASDAQ right now. Right now, it is open to lower prices as long as this break continues. But that's not the end of it. It could also find support on this line. So markets are to be complex because this green line could actually end up being support based on uniformity. This is where the market's been finding support over the last year. So this could also be potentially an area of support. And that's why studying the charts, looking across the global markets to understand where the energy is leaning towards can help, because markets are complex and lots of variables. Take a look at BTC. This is the 4 hourly, and I had been discussing the RSI trend line. the backtest, and it seems to me that this is still a challenge. Of course, the market is looking like it is confirming this backtest on the 4-hourly for BTC. And my theory is that whatever happens to the US market is going to happen to the cryptos. I think they've been moving in step. In other words, markets are mirroring each other. If the cryptos are due for a plunge, then the general US market is due for a plunge, if not the general global market. If I was to update this chart, we can see that BTC is being rejected right here at RSI 50 on the 4-hourly right now, suggesting that as long as that's the case, crypto market participants can start expecting a swing trade lower for BTC and the cryptos at large. Take a look at Litecoin. This chart was saved when it was up about 9%. And here too, we got the backtest line that I was discussing. And again, we can see that the market is responding. Even as Litecoin is showing a positive gain for the day, the 4-hourly is suggestive that this is where there is resistance. Or if the market has an appetite for higher prices, it needs to clear the blue line. Right now, it is showing resistance. Let me update this chart. And now we can see that it is showing resistance right here. So from a swing trade perspective, even Litecoin is lining up with other charts suggesting swing trade to the downside. Unless it can gather enough energy to move above this backtest line that is giving it resistance at the present moment. If we take a look at Ethereum, it's down about 1.75% at the moment. This is consistent with the RSI trend line that we had been discussing or have been discussing with you. In fact, we can see over the last day or so, it has tagged this area twice. And as long as this resistance continues, as long as it is unable to clear above the line, this is also suggesting that the cryptos are also pointing down. We shall see. And so it is. EACS. Eric Muadith, Muadith.com. Love, light, light, love. Namaste.